Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me on today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe TV. First, our major stories. Amnesty International, concerns African and other local and international human rights organizations in a joint report outlined gross human rights violations such as killings, abductions, sexual violence and destruction of homes committed by both the defense and security forces and separatist fighters in the conflict northwest and southwest regions. They all urge the government to protect human rights in these crisis-stricken regions. And also in health, at least 6% of the Cameroonian population have been diagnosed with diabetes. Endocrinologists blame the rapid rise in poor diet and lifestyle. Commemorating World Diabetes Day, experts say diabetes is no longer a disease of the affluent, as even children are not spared. Those are major stories. Stay with us for details and more. Thank you so much for staying with us. I am Immaculate Fogwe. Amnesty International and 15 civil society organizations say it is time to put a stop to human rights violations in the northwest and southwest regions. In a joint declaration published on November 14, 2023, they accused armed separatists and state defense forces of continuously committing atrocities and grossly violating the rights of the population, activists, journalists, and rights defenders who document their crimes. We have details with Innocent Aze.
In the joint declaration published by the rights group Amnesty International and 15 other civil society organizations on Cameroon's periodic review, these associations requesting the respect of human rights in Anglophone Cameroon by authorities indicate that atrocities and abuses have been recurrent in the northwest and southwest regions committed by the war belligerents based on information obtained from the population. Attacks and death threats are served to activists, journalists and rights defenders who document and reveal atrocities and abuses committed by the non-state armed militia and the military. Amnesty International and the civil society organizations mount pressure on the Cameroonian government to immediately investigate all the allegations of human rights violations committed by both parties and prosecute those responsible in fair trials in appropriate courts. They also press on the immediate and unconditional release of all arbitrarily arrested and detained in the context of the crisis and throughout the country. Journalists, human rights defenders and activists who receive threats for having documented or denounced the crimes committed must be protected. Cameroon's international partners are also called upon to condemn crimes committed by the warring parties, followed by investigation, highlight injustice of arbitrary detention of people, and call for their immediate release. Call for the protection of journalists, rights defenders and activists in the Anglophone regions and throughout the country, and order the Cameroonian government to initiate a thorough, independent and impartial investigation of abuses committed by the war belligerents. Amnesty International and the civil society organizations hit hard on the table. It is time for action to stop the atrocities in Anglophone Cameroon and to protect human rights.
On a similar story, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, in its most recent report discloses the persistent violence in the Anglophone regions has deprived more than 1.4 million children from going to school. It calls on state forces and armed separatists to stop attacking school children and education personnel. Innocent Aze, once more with details.
To the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Cameroon, OCHA, the armed conflict in the northwest and southwest regions has drowned the education of close to 2 million children into the Deep Blue Sea due to persistent tensions, attacks and threats. Since 2017, going to school has become an adventure for children and teachers. OCHA states that between January and July 2023, at least 13 violent incidents against education have been reported, including abduction of children and teachers. In September, during the 2-week lockdown from November 4 to September 17, schools were forced to close and several people killed, kidnapped, or physically assaulted for not respecting the separatist injunction. OCHA notes its partners reported that 2,245 schools are still not functioning in 2023 in the northwest and southwest regions due to attacks and threats from non-state armed groups, often characterized by gun shooting, killings, arson, and abductions. Apart from the northwest and southwest regions, OCHA also reports the closure of schools in the far north region and the displacement of more than 420,000 people, leaving thousands of children out of school since emergence of the Lake Chad Basin conflict, as well as intercommunal tensions and natural disasters. OCHA urges government authorities to take appropriate actions to ensure the reconstruction of burnt schools in the two English-speaking regions, restore peace for safe schooling through dialogue. The group also urges the military and non-state armed groups to restrain from attacking schools, children, and education personnel, recalling education is a very important fundamental right of a child which must not be tampered with, no matter what.
And on to something else, 3 suspected bandits who are accused of having orchestrated an attack at the Karifulume neighborhood in Bafoussam, that is the chieftain of the West region, and now in the dragnet of security officers. The suspects are reported to have stolen over 7 million francs CFA from their victims. They were caught in their hideout right here in the city of Douala. Smajikan Gabriel tells us more.
They were 3 in number who were presented by the elements of the public security in Bafoussam, West region of Cameroon, to the public. They are accused of robbing in broad daylight.
Concerning the case of armed robbers, on the 9th October 2023, some burglars, armed robbers, had perpetrated a spectacular robbery in the place called Karifulume.
The suspected bandits had to frighten the crowd before engaging in their operation.
They came with the guns, shoot everywhere to disperse the population. After that, they enter a store of mobile money transaction where they took 7 million and more than 20 telephones.
Thanks to investigations conducted by the police officers in Bafoussam, all 3 suspects were arrested in Douala.
Our criminal investigation permit us to put the hand on them in the town of Douala with 2 guns, 10 bullets, and a machete, and they accepted all the offenses that were levied on them.
The owner of the money transaction point who was shot is responding to treatment, while the 3 suspects have been handed to the State Council for further prosecution.
Now we talk health. At least 6% of Cameroonians suffer from type 2 diabetes. Endocrinologists say the lifestyle of many has favored the continuous increase in the number of patients in Cameroon. As the world commemorates the World Diabetes Day, our reporter AC Lucy Liengu spoke to an endocrinologist at the Douala General Hospital, and she compiled this report for us.
Type 2 diabetes is a condition which occurs when the body does not produce enough insulin to enable the body function properly. Diabetes mellitus type 2 often develops in people over the age of 45.
I've been diabetic since 2012, and it's not easy to live with diabetes. You have a lot of challenges.
Dr. Folong Kamta, an endocrinologist, says in Cameroon the number of diabetes patients has increased.
A prevalence of 6% of diabetes in the population in Cameroon. With time, you have an increase of this prevalence because we are receiving many cases.
It is therefore important for people below or above the age of 45 to know the diabetes state.
The normal glucose level is around 7.8 to 1.10 grams per liter, normally.
The signs and symptoms can be perceived.
You can see that you are urinating a lot than before. we are losing weight, we have some blurred vision, we have like fatigue, we like feeling thirsty too much, your mouth will be too dry like before, you can have a wound who's not heal fast.
Dr. Folong Kamta explains that diabetes can be treated if the patient changes his or her lifestyle.
To eat healthy, to reduce consumption of alcohol and tobacco, to drink a lot of water, and to do more exercise. And the second stage is now the treatment, medical treatment. It can be tablet, it can be injection like insulin, so it will depend on your stage.
As Cameroon joins the international community to celebrate the World Diabetes Day, endocrinologists call on patients to get screened during campaigns or visit the hospital. The theme for this year is Access to Diabetes Care.
And out of our national frontiers, Liberians headed to the polls today, Tuesday, to decide whether to re-elect former Success star George Weah or George Boakai, former vice president. And in Gabon, military authorities have announced that presidential elections will take place in August 2025. A compilation of our international page with Cedric Chakutio.
In Gabon, the military government that overthrew President Ali Bongo Ndimba this summer announced that presidential and legislative elections will be held in October 2025 according to an indicative timetable to be validated by a national conference next April. For now, the main opposition candidate in the election, Albert Ondo Osa, initially called the coup a family affair since coup leader General Biso Ngema is reportedly a relative of Ali Bongo. And in Liberia, Liberians have been voting on Tuesday in a runoff election between President George Weah and former Vice President Joseph Boakai in what is expected to be a closely fought vote between the two old rivals. Former soccer star Weah came to power in 2018 and won just 7,000 more votes than career politician Boakai in the October poll. Boakai failed to reach the 50% needed to secure an outright victory. Many voters said they were underwhelmed by Weah's first term, which have been dogged by graft scandals and persistent poverty in Africa's oldest independent republic.
Now we talk sports. Youths in Cameroon have been advised never to give up on their dreams and also be patient. The advice was given by MMA heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou as he met with the people of Douala after his great performance against Tyson Fury in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Francis Ngannou came back to some of his experience as he started his boxing career. Smarty Kangable, a sportsman, tells us more.
Cameroonian-born mixed martial art MMA heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou meets with the Douala population for the first time after his extraordinary performance last October 28, 2023 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. In a press conference, Francis Ngannou recounted his experience. I said to myself that it wasn't a bad experience living from one sport to another where no one had confidence in me. I had told them even if I am not good in boxing, they should be afraid of me. Before the confrontation against Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou had doubted himself. I was asking myself how I would go and stand against someone who has been in boxing for long, and the stakes were against me. Even in my dreams, I know I will not make it. My objective was, if it wasn't possible to beat Tyson, I give in my best. After successfully withstanding the 10 rounds of the boxing bout against the World Boxing Council champion Tyson Fury, where almost everyone in the world saw he was rigged of his victory by the judges, Francis Ngannou says he has nothing against the judges. Personally, I have nothing against the judges because they were all bought away, so it's normal for them to lean on what they had. Even before the fight, it was already clear. It happens not only here, even at UFC. The press conference was an opportunity for Francis Ngannou to acknowledge the impact of Mike Tyson. In my first official fight in boxing, it was Mike Tyson who was by my side. Only his presence had a great impact. It was a renewed confidence that boosted my my spirit. On the technical aspect, for me, Mike Tyson is a model in the heavyweight boxing that should be followed because he is very technical. From Predator, Francis Ngannou is now called the Imperator.
And that sports page ends this edition of the first part of the news. Talking Point is up next. Tonight on Talking Point, I'll be having as guest Dr. Folong Kamta. She's an endocrinologist at the Douala General Hospital. Good evening, doctor. It is a pleasure having you on Talking Point today. We heard in the report done by AC Lucy Liengu that at least 6% of the Cameroon population are diabetic. Before coming to the percentage, what should a layman understand by the term diabetes?
Hello, Immaculate. It's a pleasure to receive you today to have a small talk about diabetes. So, diabetes, like I was saying before, is elevated to your sugar when you are in fasting blood sugar more than 1.6 grams per liter. So, it's a chronic disease which is getting increasing in our country.
Now, how can one tell he or she is diabetic?
Okay, so they have some common symptoms to diabetes, like urinating a lot, thirsty, losing of weight, and fatigue. There's other one like you have a scar who no heal fast, or you are feeling like you have some itches in your body and without any causes.
You earlier mentioned glucose, blood sugar. Now, what is the normal glucose level of a non-diabetic patient?
Okay, when you're non-diabetic when you're non-diabetic patient, the normal value is between 0.7 to 1.10 gram per liter of sugar. So you're saying that you're diabetes when you're taking at least we take a fasting blood sugar, and the thing is the sugar is more than 1.6 grams per liter. When it passes 1.10, you say that you are in pre-diabetes state. So at that time, they will give you some advice or maybe put you on drugs, so it depends on the case, to try to bring the sugar at the normal value.
Let's come back to Cameroon. We earlier heard in the news that 6% of the population are suffering with diabetes. I would like to hear from you. Are the cases increasing or rather decreasing? And if it is increasing, what accounts for the rapid rise in diabetic cases?
Cameroon, we are seeing the increasing of diabetes with time. So there were 6% prevalence of diabetes, but with time we are seeing that the increasing of the diabetes is common in our country. The population are not well informed of the lifestyle. You know, diabetes is mostly causing of the poor lifestyle. When I say poor lifestyle, is what population are not eating healthy. When you say healthy, is what to eat more vegetable, to drink a lot of water, to reduce alcohol and tobacco, and also to make some exercise. So when you have a good lifestyle like this, I'll just forget, to reduce sweetened food. So when you have a good lifestyle, at least you will not see diabetes come in your life.
You mentioned diet. You mentioned also lifestyle. Now, how should a diabetic diet look like? Should I go in for everything, or there are some specific foodstuffs I'm supposed to avoid if I am diabetic?
The diabetic diet is basic. It's about everything you are eating. The problem is to make sure that you not eat too much carbohydrates in your diet. You eat much vegetable, you take your fruit, and you do some much exercise. So when I'm saying carbohydrate is this common thing that you see in the market, like cocoa, like yams, like plantain. So if you take those things in the moderate portion, and you take more vegetable, I think this balance like this will make that the sugar will not be too high.
Who is at risk of suffering with the disease? Is there a particular age range that is susceptible to being a diabetic patient?
You have diabetes at any age, because you have a different way to have a diabetes. So at any age you can have diabetes. Children can get diabetes, adults, or all person.
You said anybody is susceptible to having diabetes. Now, we hear about type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Are there any similarities between both of these two types of diabetes?
When you're talking about type 1 or type 2 diabetes, it's more the physiology of our body, because the diabetes. What is a diabetes exactly? Inside our body there's one organ that we call pancreas, and that pancreas have some cells used to produce insulin, and that insulin is helping to reduce, so to bring the sugar inside the cells of the body. So there's a time that insulin is not really produced, so the cell cannot produce this insulin, that we call it type 1. And the other fact, they can produce insulin, but it's not at the normal range, or maybe the power of those insulin is not really good. At that time you have that
health problems that can trigger diabetes. And also, when one is diabetic, are there some of things patients need to avoid?
Yes, you have many other illness who can bring diabetes. Diabetes is to put it inside the hormonal disease. Insulin is a hormone. So another hormonal disease can make the sugar to be high also. There's some cancer also make the sugar to be high. There's some infection who can make sugar to be high. So you have many conditions or major state of your heart who can bring the sugar to be high. So at that time, you intervene to bring that sugar low, or maybe to classify the type of diabetes that you have at that time, to make sure that there's a proper management. When you are diabetics, now like this, the most thing that you have to avoid is mostly sweetened things. When I say sweetened things, they can be cured of sugar. There's a honey, because people think that honey is a diabetic sugar. No, it's not a diabetic sugar, so you need to avoid those things. And the other thing is maybe to try to avoid fried food. Everything go inside the fried. You are frying, maybe, potatoes, plantain, all these things. So it's mostly to reduce sweetened things, to eat more vegetable and less carbohydrates.
As of now, is there a cure for diabetes in Cameroon?
Diabetes is not cured. Diabetes is not curing. It's a state, like I told you before, it's a problem of the pancreas, the cells. The cell producers can be damaged. So there's nothing to go and replace that cells. So the thing that you are doing now is either to give medication to boost those cells to produce insulin, or maybe to reduce the lacking of insulin inside the body.
We have heard cases where patients claim that after consuming herbal remedies, they got cured of diabetes. Is there not a possibility of merging modern medicine and herbal medicine for better treatment results in Cameroon?
It's true that even in modern medicine, you see people taking medication and sometimes the sugar will be stable and you won't need medication again. There's a case like this that they call, in English, remission. So it can be like I told you before, the pancreas is like a machine. So when you give high treatment, the cell can make the production of the insulin again, and everything will be okay. But those cases like this, you have continued to follow them, because after some time, you see by the way again that the sugar will be high. So to say that traditional medicine can bring the sugar low or not, we are receiving many patients here who went to the traditional medication and came back later with high blood sugar. So I'm not saying that it's not curing, but maybe you like to have a small study about it, so that you make together to find a good solution. Maybe to try those projects also but for now, there's no medication curing diabetes.
Dr. Folong Kamta, an endocrinologist at the Douala General Hospital. And that's what put an end to today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. Thank you so much, dear viewers, for your keen attention. Up next is Equinoxe with Serge Alain Otto. Stay with us.